2025 is nearly over, so let's take a look back at what came out in Star Wars and talk about the must-see or read stories of the year. First up, let's talk about streaming and Skeleton Crew, which only released its final 2 episodes in January. It's technically more of a 2024 series, but I wanted to talk about it because it took me 3 episodes to really get into it. Episode 4 and beyond were fantastic, and the final 2 episodes that came out in 2025 nailed the landing. I thought the cast of kids were all wonderful and had some especially strong performances in the finale. I loved Fern talking about how the galaxy is dark but full of pinpricks of light. I loved the kids and Wendell racing through the woods on their small speeder bikes to fight pirates, and I loved Wim looking up at the stars realizing he can have a greater future than he ever believed. Those last 2 episodes rocked, and I hope we revisit those kids and Jot in the future. It was just a joy to watch. Which is in stark contrast to Andor Season 2 because wow did things get dark, and the fact that it wound up being so relevant to the current political climate made watching the show a unique experience to say the least. But just like the first season, it was insanely good. Crazy good writing, amazing performances, tension, action, love, sacrifice, tragedy, the show had it all. The worst thing about the series wound up being that it's only 2 seasons, but I think it's a miracle that a show of this quality and on this scale got made at all. I'll be forever grateful for Andor, and I hope we get a Steelbook 4K release for Season 2 soon. If you experience just one Star Wars story from 2025, it should be Andor. Just like Skeleton Crew said, it was a pinprick of light and hope in the midst of a dark year that shows fighting fascism isn't just about blowing up the Death Star, it's all the little fights and little sacrifices and little victories that happen every single day that eventually get us to the point where we can win and win big. Moving on to Star Wars publishing, we're gonna stick with the same kind of genre as Andor because The Mask of Fear by Alexander Freed was another banger from the author. It was written to be for fans of Andor, and yeah, success, well done. We follow Mon Mothma, Bail Organa, Saw Gerrera, and some new characters in the days following the Emperor's rise to power. Once again, things are dark and very politically relevant. It felt tough to read so early in the year at times, but it also felt important. Look, I love Star Wars when it's pulpy and weird and just plain fun. That's always been in the DNA of the universe. But I also think there's plenty of room for these kinds of stories that hold a mirror up to its audience to really hammer home some of the themes that I think can sometimes get lost in all the fun. That's why the Clone Wars literally spelled out its lessons at the start of every episode, and even still, some people just weren't paying attention or they forgot what they learned. I'm glad we're getting more Star Wars stories aimed at adults that are still accessible to younger generations. Trials of the Jedi by Charles Soule was the final novel in the High Republic Publishing Initiative, and if you've been keeping up with all those stories, obviously this one is a must-read. It also explores themes of sacrifice and has some very heavy moments, but it keeps a really good balance with the fun and mystical and weird as we explore a new realm of the Force and dive into the origins of the Shriekeray. The High Republic was a really special project to me, and I would recommend every Star Wars fan at least give it a try. But don't start with Trials of the Jedi, start with Light of the Jedi and go from there. I'm just saying, Trials was a standout story from me from this year. Check out the video in the cards if you want to learn more about how to start reading the High Republic. Sanctuary, the Bad Batch novel by Lamar Giles, was a big surprise to me. I figured I would enjoy the book, but usually when you get a story sandwiched between episodes of a TV series, they wind up being very tight and restricted. Sanctuary didn't feel that way at all. It easily could have been 2 or 3 episodes of the show. It felt appropriately big and important and dropped new lore about clone troopers, and the characters were written well, and the villains were compelling. I just remember reading it and vibing with it the entire time. If you're a Bad Batch or Clone Trooper fan, I happily give Sanctuary my recommendation. Master of Evil was the last book of the year released, and I was very pleased with it. It came out just after Halloween, and I thought it was a great gothic horror-style story that was perfect for spooky season. It's a cool take on Star Wars that had some absolutely awesome locations that I don't want to spoil since the book came out somewhat recently, but something happened in this book that made me wonder why we had never seen the likes of it before. It was wild, but also made complete sense to me. Diving into comics, the first one I want to mention is Echoes of Fear, a High Republic title from Dark Horse. If you were a High Republic reader and you skipped this one, I highly recommend going back to it. The plot wound up being pretty important to the final phase, but also the art by Vincenzo Riccardi in the first issue was insane. It was so good, I also want to shout out his work on Dispatches from the Occlusion Zone number 4. That series wasn't as important to the overall story of the High Republic, but I just stared at Vincenzo's art in those issues. Unfortunately, the rest of the year for comics didn't really grab me. There have been standout issues of Legacy of Vader and Jedi Knights, but the latest run of ongoing series haven't seemed as impactful as the ones that started in 2020 with the War of the Bounty Hunters and the Syndicate War and all that. The comics aren't bad, but I wouldn't call them must-reads either. So that's it for my favorite Star Wars stories from 2025. Let me know what your favorites were down in the comments. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on our socials, and consider checking out our Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.